What's up, guys? It's me, Tiff, and I'm back after a brief intermission. I attended every single day of Sam Bankman-Fried's criminal trial, and I covered it here on YouTube, on Twitter, on Substack, etc., and that trial has finally come to a close. The jury deliberated, and within about 4 hours, Sam Bankman-Fried was found guilty of all 7 of his criminal charges, which included multiple counts of fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and money laundering. Sam is currently slated for a second trial beginning on March 11th for 5 additional charges, which includes his campaign finance charge. The government has until February 1st to let the court know whether or not they plan to actually proceed with this second trial. But it looks like Sam Bankman-Fried is already facing a substantial amount of prison time based on the verdict of the first trial. So Sam's sentencing hearing, where we'll find out how many years he'll actually face in prison, is currently scheduled for March 28th, 2024 at 9:30 a.m. And you best believe I will be there. So let's talk about how many years Sam Bankman-Fried might actually spend in prison, because there have been a lot of numbers floating around. Sam faces a maximum statutory sentence of around 115 years in prison, but I've also seen estimates floating around like 20 to 30 or 40 years in prison. There are guidelines for recommended sentencing ranges, but the ultimate sentence is up to Judge Lewis Kaplan's discretion. And Judge Lewis Kaplan is not necessarily Sam Bankman-Fried's biggest fan, but we'll get to that. First, let's break down how sentencing actually works. Brief pause, but I wanted to thank Aura for sponsoring this video. Aura is an identity theft and data security company that protects you from scammers and hackers by scanning the web and the dark web for your sensitive information like your emails, passwords, social security number, etc., and alerts you immediately if it finds anything, as well as automatically requests removal for you. Aura's actually found a ton of my personal information leaked out there on the internet, like my passwords, my home address, and my phone number, etc., and they automatically alerted me as well as requested removal for me. So I actually pay for an Aura subscription to keep my personal information safe online, and Aura is actually offering my followers a 2-week free trial at aura.com/Tiffany, or you can use this handy little QR code right here. I personally recommend trying it, even if just to see if any of your personal information has been leaked out there on the internet or on the dark web so that you can try to get it removed. Anyway, I love Aura, thank you for sponsoring my coverage, and back to the video. Former federal prosecutor Kathryn Hahn provided her breakdown of Sam Bankman-Fried's potential sentencing. Basically, Judge Kaplan will refer to the sentencing guidelines to assess a recommended sentencing range, calculated by combining Sam's prior criminal history, which is none, with a total numerical offense level. Take the wire fraud count, Kathryn Hahn says. The guidelines specify an offense level of 7, but that offense level gets enhanced for a number of factors the government may demonstrate. For example, the number of victims, which are a lot, the amount of money lost, which is a lot, sophisticated means, leadership, Sam was CEO, etc. Kathryn Hahn says that here, the loss amount is far and away the real driver of a recommended guidelines prison term. Although the indictment doesn't allege a specific total monetary loss, the guidelines loss enhancements actually cap out at $550 million. And I think no matter what way you spin it, Sam Bankman-Fried is responsible for the loss of billions of dollars, with a B. In fact, the amount of money initially recorded as missing from FTX was about $8.6 billion, so it's literally off the charts. So Kathryn Hahn does some quick math on the guidelines. She says, +7 base offense level, +30 loss amount being above $550 million, +6 for 25 victims suffered financial hardship, which in FTX's case, there are a lot more than 25 victims, +2 for scheme abroad or sophisticated means, as, you know, FTX was international, +2 for leadership role, as Sam Bankman-Fried was the CEO, which brings the total offense level tally to 47. Kathryn Hahn notes that this does not take into account all the other enhancements the government may pursue or arguments the defense may advance about why certain enhancements shouldn't apply. But they would be unlikely to impact the final calculation because the max total offense level caps out at 43 anyway. So again, Sam is literally off the charts. According to Kathryn Hahn, a total offense level of 43 results in a recommended guideline sentence of life in prison. She says, suppose, however, that the judge declined to impose some of these enhancements or cut the total loss amount in half such that the TOL was closer to, say, 41. That would still yield a recommended guideline sentence of 27 to 34 years. As a result, Catherine Hahn concludes that Sam will likely spend decades in prison. Considering the charges that Sam has been found guilty of, the judge could theoretically impose any sentence at his discretion up to the combined statutory maximum, which by her math is around 115 years. The 5 charges pertaining to wire fraud or money laundering each individually carry a maximum sentence of 20 years, and the securities fraud and commodities charges have maximum sentences of 5 years. The judge will decide if Sam's sentences will be served consecutively or concurrently, or in other words, stacked to be served one after the other or served all at once. The 110 or 115 year estimates assume that Sam serves his sentences consecutively, but it's also possible that Sam could serve his sentences concurrently, which is why we're seeing some estimates like 20 years, or 30 years, or 40 years, etc. with some enhancements. Just for an estimate, I personally spoke with a former AUSA prosecutor. He said it's hard to say what his sentence will be because the judge has a very wide range he can sentence within. It could be as high as 110 years, and I would be very surprised if the judge went below 10 years. My guess is that it will be in the 20+ year range. He said the judge can run the sentences concurrently or consecutively, it's totally up to him. When a defendant goes to trial and is convicted and also testifies in his own defense in an unconvincing way, the judge is more likely to run the sentences consecutively. So that is obviously very bad news for Sam Bankman-Fried. Some other factors that will play a role in Judge Kaplan's sentencing include the nature and circumstances of the offense, the defendant's criminal history and characteristics, the need for the sentence to deter crime and protect the public. And honestly, given the prominence of the case and the trial itself, I think Judge Kaplan could be inclined to maybe throw the book at Sam just to send a message. Judge Kaplan is also just not necessarily Sam's biggest fan. First of all, Sam managed to piss off Judge Lewis Kaplan before the trial even started. While Sam was still on house arrest, he repeatedly pushed the boundaries of his bail conditions, first by contacting former employees like FTX General Counsel Ryan Miller, then by using a VPN to allegedly watch the Super Bowl, and then by leaking Caroline Ellison's diary to the New York Times, which the judge considered witness tampering. In fact, in a July court hearing last year, Judge Lewis Kaplan said that Sam Bankman-Fried has shown a willingness and a desire to risk crossing the line in an effort to get right up to it, no matter where the line is. And Judge Lewis Kaplan was so fed up with Sam Bankman-Fried that he revoked his bail and threw him in jail before the trial even began. Then, more obviously, Sam decided to testify at his own criminal trial and pissed Judge Lewis Kaplan off even more. Sam was evasive and cagey and difficult and gave attitude during his cross-examination, and refused to answer basic questions straightforwardly by constantly saying that he doesn't recall or doesn't remember, etc. To the point at which Judge Lewis Kaplan had to repeatedly tell Sam to just answer the question, and even pointed out that he had an interesting way of answering questions. Also, given the fact that Sam repeatedly denied defrauding investors while on the stand, Judge Lewis Kaplan might determine that he lied under oath, or just feel that Sam is unwilling to accept responsibility. All of these things could potentially add time to Sam's sentencing. However, Sam does have a couple of things going in his favor. For example, he's very young. He's only 31 years old. The judge might be inclined to give Sam a chance to live a full life after his prison term, especially since he has no previous criminal record. If we compare Sam to Bernie Madoff, for example, who got a 150-year prison sentence, Madoff was obviously much older, with limited productive years left. The judge might feel that Sam has an opportunity to learn and grow and maybe one day make some positive contribution in his lifetime. Also, Madoff's fraud was perpetrated for over a decade, and FTX only lasted a few years. So Sam's crimes being perpetrated for a much shorter duration and also not being violent in nature will also work in his favor. Additionally, apparently Judge Kaplan has been critical of the guidelines in the past and has departed from them multiple times in white-collar cases to give more lenient sentences. According to Bloomberg Law, in the past, Judge Kaplan has stated that the amount of financial loss plays a disproportionate role in economic crimes, which means the recommended sentences in those cases are often too harsh. Judge Kaplan has overseen a number of high-profile criminal cases during his 3+ decades on the bench, and has said that sentencing requires an individualized judgment. At a fairly recent May 2022 sentencing hearing for a crypto trader accused of running a Ponzi-like scheme, Judge Kaplan stated, "I understand the guidelines have no real empirical basis, it is just what some committee negotiated, and so I don't attach too much weight to it." Kaplan then sentenced the traitor to a 3.5-year prison term, which was below the guidelines recommended 5 years. In 2019, Kaplan sentenced a former Adidas AG executive convicted in a college basketball recruiting scandal to a 9-month jail term, less than the guidelines recommendation of 46 to 57 months. In another hearing, Kaplan has stated that if one doesn't know it before one has the privilege and the duty to sit in judgment of other human beings, one learns it very quickly that there aren't any saints and there aren't any pure sinners on this earth, not one. The question is what the mix is in individual cases. And not to be corny, but I think that's very profound and very true. Anyway, as Sam Bankman-Fried awaits his tentative second trial starting on March 11th and his sentencing hearing on March 28th, he will remain in his jail cell at MDC Brooklyn. In the meantime, Sam will be interviewed by probation officers on his full background and history and upbringing. The probation officer may also interview his friends and family and people who knew him. Apparently, this will all go into a pre-sentence report or a PSR report that will make recommendations on his sentencing. Apparently, the government and the defense both have an opportunity to input sentencing submissions. Basically, to put his crimes in context, the defense will probably highlight his charitable giving and his effective altruism. And the government will likely highlight the severity of the crimes and how many people it impacted. Otherwise, it looks like there will be quite a bit of waiting in jail for Sam. And you know I will be flying back to New York City to cover Sam's potential second trial as well as his sentencing hearing at the end of the month. Otherwise, I'll also be covering other topics on this channel. I started this channel last year specifically because I lost a lot of money to Celsius Network and I wanted to cover the bankruptcy and now, alleged fraud. That turned into me leaking a bunch of information about Celsius and then into Sam Bankman-Fried following me and then turned into me interviewing Sam Bankman-Fried because his company collapsed. Quite a strange little whirlwind, and if there are any topics that you would like to see me cover, please let me know. I plan on carrying on in this little world of crypto fraud, but I'm also open to covering anything that sounds fun or interesting or amusing to me. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'm not going anywhere. I also wanted to thank Aura for sponsoring this video. Again, I personally use Aura to keep my information safe online, so if you want to check out a 2-week free trial, which I highly recommend, you can go to aura.com/Tiffany. Anyway, I love you all so very much, and I'll talk to you very, very soon. Bye!
If my life ended now, I would almost certainly have done that harm to the world. And it's hard to spin that.
How does that thought weigh on you? Like, is that something like...
The fact that I have done that harm weighs enormously on me.